Well, welcome back to the Ford Transit Campervan Build, and this time I'm going to be talking all about seats. So you might have seen in some of the previous videos that this chair has been elsewhere. That was just moved temporarily so I could get a feel for where it was going. But this episode I'm going to be moving the double bench seat from the front and moving it into the back. I'm going to be putting a single seat into the front for a single passenger seat. So the plan is, for the front passenger seat I'm going to have to make a custom bracket. The seat I've got was kindly given to me by one of my YouTube subscribers, the Campervan Diaries, and that's a single passenger seat from the rear section of a Ford Transit Mk8 minibus. So that's got an integrated seat belt, and that's a crash tested seat, and I'm going to be mounting it in the front. I'm going to be using the original bolt holes in the floor of the van and the original bolt holes in the seat. However, I'm going to need to make a bracket so those bolt holes line up. And the rear seat, I'm going to be moving that into the back. I'm going to be disconnecting one seat belt, as this seat's sort of got one integrated seat belt, and that's going to go in the back, and that's going to be bolted through the floor. Legal information for... So, I'm going to pause the video there, because I start to talk about legal bits, and I start to waffle on a little bit. So I'm going to try and condense that down into a more coherent patch of information. For starters, this is all to do with UK law. And also, don't take legal advice off random people or the internet. Do your own research as well. What I'm going to say is my views or interpretations looking on the government website and the laws surrounding it. So for starters, regarding insurance, it's counts as a modification to the van. DVLA, so informing them. From my understanding, if I change the carrying capacity of the van, I would need to inform them. I'm actually losing one of the seat belts, so I can still only carry 3 people in total. If I was to have a working seatbelt there, that might increase the van's capacity to 4, and I have to inform the DVLA. Since it's still 3 people in seatbelts, I don't think I have to inform them. And regarding the MOT, as far as I'm aware, I don't have to go for a re-MOT because I've installed a different seat. But when I go for my MOT next time, just as they would normally, they check sort of for structural defects of the seat mounting and the seatbelt points on the passenger seat and the driver's seat, irregardless if it's the original seat or you've replaced it. And from my understanding, they probably actually won't even look at seat in the back. According to the government website, for mounting seats in the rear, it says just mount them in a way where, in the case of an accident, they wouldn't break free, which is kind of vague. But you'll see later on how I've mounted these seats down to the bottom of the van. But yeah, so that's all the legal bits I can think of. I'm not going to waffle on too much more, and do your own research on it as well. Back to the main bit of the video. So, seats in the back, there seems to be some recommendations of how you mount them, which is effectively through the floor of the van using spreader plates up to certain dimensions underneath. And the way I'm doing it, it's using more and thicker steel than the actual seat itself and the floor of the van. So, yeah, if you plan to do anything like this yourself, do all your research yourself. Let's get this seat moved into the back. I'm not going to pretend it's bolted down because I've already taken the bolts out, otherwise I'd have been faffing around trying to find the right bit on camera for ages. So let's move this into the back of the van. So I fully appreciate this won't be up to everyone's preferences. I have quite decreased the gap here to get through. It's still not too difficult to get through, to be honest. And I can still happily stand at the counter without leaning back to use the sink or whatever. But I am quite happy with the size of the seat. It's seat belted, and when I put a table mount here or here, means I can sit there, enjoy my dinner, or have the door open, or have a table and use it as my desk. And the convenient thing about the Ford Transit version is that the seats all lift up. So you've got access to a nice chunk of storage below, which would be quite nice for boot storage. So it would still have this seat belt integrated into it. Right, in the front of the van, so it seems the body of the Ford Transits are kind of made with both the single and double seats already installed. So the bolt holes for the double bench seat is this one, this one, this one, and this one. However, this head here of a square would be where the single seat would go. And if you lift it up, there is already a bolt hole there with just a bit of plastic over it at the minute. So I've got 4 bolt holes in place already for my single seat. So I'm running out of time to get the van finished for going away and selling Christmas trees. And I don't have also the abilities to weld, and I don't really have the abilities to cut, to do a lot of metal fabrication. So I've probably gone for what is a really very over-spec'd way of doing it. But I've got two 50cm lengths of 100mm by 60mm by 3mm wall steel box section. And the plan is, plonk it on there, plonk the other one on there, drill holes in one side of it to line them up with the original factory seat mounts, and then bolt those through. And then the same for that one and the other one. Secure, so that's got a secure steel mount, and then put the single seat on, drill bolt holes to line up with the bolt holes on that seat through the top section, and bolt those on. And that's going to be my bracket for the seat, and I think it's a simple solution that I can feasibly do. Here, definitely overkill on the steel, as I'm pretty sure the van floor here is only around 2mm to 2.5mm thick steel, and looking at the brackets on the rails on the single passenger seat, they don't seem as thick as this. So the strongest part of the system might be the steel box section. So let's get that sorted. Something I will mention regarding actual MOT aspects is, on some vehicles, or if they're already a passenger seated vehicle, if you disconnect the electrics for that front seat, which might include the airbag sensor, you might set off the SRS light on your dashboard, which if you were MOT tested, that would be a failure. Irregardless of the reason, there's a fault in the system. So even if you've removed that seat completely and no one would ever use it, if that sensor is still off or going off on your dashboard, that will be an MOT failure. So it's important to understand, if you're doing it, what needs to be done to make sure that sensor's not gone off. In my case, although there is this wiring loom, this was never plugged into anything, which is what I suspect would have been if you had an electric version of the seat, or maybe the single passenger seat, that might have been plugged in to do something. In this case, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to have to cut out some of this floor matting to get these beams in. Right, here is the seat belt and put it in. Almost identical to the trim on this one, apart from the middle panel slightly different. So I'm going to trim off these legs at the front to make it level with these ones. Yeah, so I'm going to slide this onto here, so I can start getting an idea of where I'm going to cut off the front of those and the position of the chair overall. I'm not too worried about cutting off the rails because it's from a minibus, and these rails went the length of the minibus on both sides for all the different chairs to fit in, because the chairs themselves are unboltable from the rails. Give me a nice gap in the middle to get through into the driving seat. I will build a small floor to cover up that mess and open area, and more or less sitting on those like that. Obviously these will be flush and tightened up, and I'll get rid of these bolt holes. Cool, let's figure it out. So I'm going to cut down the rails, and the way this seat attaches to the rails, it's just got big, I think, N10 bolts in the back. So you can just lift it out like that. And then we can cut this up. Well, apparently this can cut steel, so let's see how well it does that. Right, let's do the annoyingly difficult task of realigning these back up again. So first off, I need to trim a little bit of plastic off that door sill so that the metal beam sits flat to the floor. I've trimmed off whatever that material is. chiseled off more, be more precise. Right, it's taken me a while to figure out. This is generally how the mounting is going to go. Drill through the hole at the bottom of there, bolt up, and then drill through, then bolt down. I'll probably make a facade to tidy it up a bit in the long term, but at the minute that's going to work seat wise. Right, the bolt hole's big enough on 2 of them for me to just go under the van and approach the Sharpie up. Right, I've set punched it, so I've got to pilot them out and drill it out. This should take a while since this is quite thick steel. Minor setback. This spare one, which would be for the single passenger seat, they don't seem to tap if it's not being used, so I'm tapping it basically by just chucking a spare screw down it. There you go, it's tapped. I do actually wonder, due to the structure at the end of these bolts, it's quite flattening the threads and tapered, if that's how these are actually done. As well, they don't actually tap them with a tapper, they just impact the bolt into them. Just because we scratched some of these areas tested, I'm just going to apply a bit of Hammerite paint. So where they've put the bolt holes, they've reinforced it with this little tab, and I'm going to be putting some new bolt holes into the base of the rail. So I'm going to basically cut off these welds so I can reuse the tabs. There we go, I'll tidy up those and I can reuse them. There we go, tabs removed, so I can now position them elsewhere on the bar. Right, I've acquired a far larger drill bit to fit these bolts, so let's get them drilled out. Hopefully my measurements at the beginning were in line, otherwise these aren't going to fit very well. So without an access hole in the top of it to bolt down the far end, quite hard to get the bolt in, so I'm going to drill a hole through the top of the bar so I can do that. Access the bolts, just be able to bolt them into the existing holes. I've put a 25mm hole in the top so my socket can go in. So I'm going to do a test bolt. I'm going to bolt all of these down, fix them down, and then I'm going to put the seat on and then figure out where to put the seat holes, and then unbolt them, drill those holes, test fit, and then do final paint. So the way these bolt in, you just slot the bolt in, and then I've got my access hole on the top to actually do them up. So time to get this seat in a position, really. So just to show you the mounting plan, is the access holes for those bolts is in here, which is a 25mm hole, and I only need 10mm for the bolt. So just so there's no stop, I'm going to use the spreader plate, bolt that through there with a 10mm hole into the bottom of the rail, just to take into account that hole. And then for the other side, I'll probably drill the 10mm hole and then drill an access hole on the underside of it. Right, I'm pretty happy with the final position, so I guess it's just marking on, really. Well, making sure it's square, which is definitely not at the minute. Right, system all done. Time to disassemble, degrease, give it a coat of spray paint, and reassemble it, and job done for this part. Right, everything's cleaned and prepped, and just getting a coat of black paint, and then we can get them finally installed. Right, time to assemble everything. So I'm going to be using, it seems that the Ford Transit uses Ford's obscure, I think M11 with a weird thread on it, but I'm going to use M10s to assemble it bolt wise. I'm going to be using 8.8 grade, which is the lower end of the high tensile ones. 10.9 and 12.8 grade high tensile ones would be stronger, but they're more brittle, and apparently for seat mountings you want that slightly more flex in your bolts. Right, so I've got to assemble it. So I'm going to put these little seat carriers which came with the bolts. I presume it's just to stop vibration, shaking them a little bit looser. Right, time to get it all bolted in. Put the big old plates in. So long term, I think I'll probably get a swivel seat. All I have to do is unbolt that, and then put the swivel seat in the middle and bolt its back, top and bottom again. But happy with that. Right, let's go put all this bit back. Right, next chair to mount is this one. Sort of much of the same. It's going to be, this time I've got another 50cm one, and then because of the way this is mounted, there is actually a sort of a central or just off central bolt in the middle opposed to that corner, and there's one in the back corner. So we're going to do it this way. For these ones, the width of my floor, so from the metal van base with the insulation, which is 25mm, then 18mm plywood structural floor, and then about 2mm for the floor. That's obviously quite a raise, which is why I went for 60mm. So this should work quite well within a few mil of this sitting flush on the van floor, and then the top of this probably sitting a couple mil proud of the floor. So I'm going to have to cut out some reasonably sized chunks of a van floor to fit this, and then drill through the bottom of the van, bolt with spare plates, and then bolt this and bolt it down. So those are the positions, again using these steel mounts because every single one of those bolt holes lines up pretty much perfectly with a steel chassis member underneath. So I'm going to bolt the chair to those, and then a different area to the chassis, to the other side of the vehicle. I've just drawn out some Sharpie markers so I can cut these out now. New standing on, and let's cut a hole in my lovely floor. Drill the access hole so I can actually do the bolts, and I'm just put a Sharpie down the bottom of it, so when I put the plate underneath where I want it to be, that's going to leave a mark on there, and then I can draw that out. All mounted. So let's mark out the holes and start drilling the holes in here. So same as I did in the other one, I'm going to have to mount the seats to this first, and then after mount the brackets to the seats, and then put the brackets to the floor. Right, time to get these mounted. This is my alignment method. I'm using my iPhone positioned over that so I can see down into the access hole. So the chairs are all mounted now. I lost light last night so I didn't film the very end of it, but I'll give you a quick show of how these ones are sort of fully mounted, how it looks underneath the vehicle with the spreader plates. So that's how all of those steel beams are mounted down, using 5mm steel spreader plates, M10 bolts and then nylock nuts on them as well. Luckily they were all in positions where I didn't actually need to drop the fuel tank, I could just reach them whereabouts. And on the inside, one, I've still got access to the under seat storage, which is good. And mounted again to 100mm by 60mm by 3mm wall steel plates with big washers in. Basically just to deal with the raised aspect of the floor, so this seat effectively sits flat at floor level of the interior floor, whilst those steel box sections go all the way through to the van's metal floor which the spreader plates are attached to. And same as last time, using access holes to bolt them in at places which are convenient due to the chassis members, such as there's a chassis member here under the vehicle, so I have to bolt it there. Same for this one, the chassis member is in the middle section whilst the bolts are either side, whilst where it's actually bolted to the floor is either side, so pretty secure. So pretty happy with the ability to now walk through into my driving seat or in the passenger seat, and also have a seat belted area in the back. So that's pretty much going to sum up. Why am I sitting on not on the actual seats I've just put in? So that's pretty much going to sum up this video. Effectively reusing the original seats for the van came with and mounting them to the floor to, as far as I can see, a well over spec'd mounting system. Car going past. As far as I can see, mounted to the specifications which are required for mounting seats to the floor, and well over specified on the steel used. I think the strongest bits I think I've mounted to are the steel beam, considering the thickness of the van floor in both the original front seat and the area. Seems to be the weakest link of the system, which is why you have the spreader plates. But overall, very happy. Apart from the steel, I didn't really need to acquire much for this job. This at the minute only has one seat belt, which would be this one here, which is using the original one. The reason I haven't got the other one is because that's mounted on the pillar in the van. Long term, as the front seat's got an integrated belt, I might take the seat belt unit out of the pillar and see if I can attach it appropriately to this system here. That'd be the plan. So once again, thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next time. Any questions, message me on my Instagram. And yeah, see ya. Cheers. Bye.